If you were to just pause it, it almost doesn't even look like he's singing. I mean, look. He does not look like he's singing. He does not look like he's singing. He does not look like he's singing. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to StudioBrev, where we help you get better at singing.
Wow.
Today is actually our first live YouTube premiere, just free voice training, and we're so excited to have you here. So if you are here live, definitely hang out until the very end, because we're going to be doing a Q&A in the chat where we can help you with your singing hurdles. If you're not joining us live, then unfortunately we won't be able to do the Q&A with you.
Well, that sucks.
But you're going to want to subscribe to the StudioBrev email list so that you can be informed of our next YouTube live.
Come with me if you want to live.
My name is Danny Brevik, but you probably know me as Big Brev. In fact, you probably know me from this song. Hoist the colors high. I am the co-founder / CEO / vocal coach at StudioBrev LLC, and I'm actually joined here today with the other co-founder / my wife / my personal vocal coach. We are joined here today with Jen, aka Professor Jen, aka voice teacher extraordinaire. What's up, Jen?
Hey, everybody. So Brev and I met 17 years ago, which is wild to think about, and I have been his trusted ear ever since. We met at our undergraduate degree from Plymouth State University. We studied voice and pedagogy, and then we went on together to study voice and opera at the New England Conservatory.
I then went on to have a pretty lengthy opera career. I was even featured on the cover of Opera News back when I had a little less facial hair. And then Jen and I went on to have lengthy collegiate voice teaching careers. So we've now been teaching collegiate level voice for almost 10 years now. On top of that, I am a recording artist / content creator, YouTube creator, pretty much anything that has to do with music. We both do with music. And Jen has been working just behind the scenes the entire time with this Big Brev channel, helping me get my singing as polished as I possibly can. If it wasn't for Jen, there's no way I would have had that, amazing opera career or really any of this social media success. And so we're grateful to have her on this call with us right now for this Q&A. So today, I wanted to dig in deep on lengthening agents of the vocal tract. And so if you haven't already watched our first online training, it wasn't a live training, but there is a free training in the description, and it's going to go over our foundations to singing. It's the 4 pillars of singing, and it's going to go pretty in depth on what those 4 pillars are. So at some point you're going to want to watch those. But now we're going to be going on to lengthening agents of the vocal tract to help you even more experience just the freedom in your singing, specifically through the high notes. Like, we're going to be talking a lot about singing high notes and how to navigate through the passaggio. We'll be talking about that later. But yeah, so without further ado, 1, 2, 3, lengthening agents of the vocal tract. Now, as I said, we did have another free training, and it goes over the foundations of singing, what we call the 4 pillars of singing. And so you're definitely going to want to learn that before you really apply any of this. But today we're going to be talking about lengthening agents of the vocal tract, and we're going to be going over why they're so important. We're going to give you lots of examples on other singers using these, and then we're going to give you some tips on how you can start applying these to your singing. Now, I have mentioned this in previous YouTube videos and some of my analysis videos, but we're going to be going more in depth in these lengthening agents and why they are so important. Now, when I'm talking about the vocal tract, really what I'm talking about is I'm talking about all of the stuff in your mouth, in your nasopharynx. We're talking about your tongue, your soft palate, your hard palate, as I said, the nasopharynx, and really what we're going to be diving into is all of that stuff that's really above the larynx today. So that upper laryngeal structure. So I don't want to be going too much into the laryngeal position, just because in my experience, when students really start trying to figure that stuff out, they end up manipulating. And we have just found that there are better ways to teach larynx positions than actually just telling someone to lower their larynx or raise it. And so we're going to be giving you some tips and tricks on how you can be playing with these as well.
So what's kind of fascinating about all of this is that your unique tone is less determined by the vocal folds themselves, because they're not that unique from vocal fold to vocal fold, assuming that they are healthy. What really makes our tone unique is the vocal tract, our bone structures, which is so unique from person to person, how big our head is, how lifted our soft palate is.
It's funny because a lot of people think that the vocal folds themselves are the determining factor on how you sound, right? So I want you to think of the vocal folds as kind of like a mouthpiece to a brass instrument. So let's just take a trumpet, for example. So the mouthpiece to that trumpet, we're going to compare that to the vocal folds, but we're going to compare the vocal tract itself to the body of the instrument. So while it's the mouthpiece and the lips, particularly against the mouthpiece, that vibrate and create that vibration and that frequency, it's the body of the instrument that actually creates the tone. So in this case, your vocal tract is what's creating your personal tone. Now, everyone has a completely different vocal tract, just from person to person. No one is going to be identical. The reason for that is because our bone structure is completely different. Some of us have bigger heads, some of us have smaller heads, some people have bigger tongues, and all of that factors into your personal vocal tone, like your fingerprint. Like it's like your vocal fingerprint, right? Now, the vocal tract itself gives off what we call a formant, right? And the formant is just a bunch of resonance clusters. It's a bunch of clusters of resonance that creates this magical just sound that is you. And we can manipulate that sound by playing with the vocal tract. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and really how it relates to when we're singing higher notes, because that's when lengthening agents become even more important. Now, it's not necessarily when we get super high. That's not the only time we have to consider it. We also have to consider it when we're singing in what's called our passaggio. Now, I'm not going to be going too in-depth on what the passaggio is. I will do that in a separate video. But essentially think of the passaggio as a little area of your voice where things might get a little tight. And the reason that it gets tight is because the overtones from the note you're singing are actually clashing with those resonance clusters from your vocal tract. And so the only way to help it so it doesn't feel tight and tense is to either change the note, so sing lower, that will fix it, but we don't really want to do that. The other thing we could do is we could adjust the vocal tract, and we do this by giving it what we call a lengthening agent.
So just to give you a little bit of a visual here about the passaggio, some of you probably did this in elementary school, but stick with me if not. So I want you to imagine that we're going to be making a tornado out of two 2-liter soda bottles. So you would take the bottom bottle and you'd fill it up with water and glitter and food coloring, and you would tape the top bottle to it. Now, the bottom bottle is representative of the thyroarytenoid or the chest voice, and the top bottle is representative of the cricothyroid or the head voice. And in the middle here, imagine now where these two bottlenecks are meeting. We've now created this spot of tension. So the passaggio is this place where we have to maneuver and change and manipulate in order to pass through.
That's a great visual. It's actually one I've never heard you do before. I never thought of that before. But I do kind of want to clarify when she says the cricothyroid and the thyroarytenoid, and we do talk about this in other videos. So those are just the two muscles that are responsible for the chest voice and the falsetto or head voice. So when we say cricothyroid, we literally mean falsetto or head voice, and when we say thyroarytenoid, we mean chest voice. But we will be reminding you if we use those phrases again. So anyways, that is the passaggio. That's the point where we have a register change. But really what's happening here is there is a resonance cluster that is just clashing now with the overtone series. And so what we need to do is we need to create a lengthening agent. And so there's really two ways to create that lengthening agent. Now we can lift the soft palate, which is what we would do in classical music or in opera. And to do that, you can kind of yawn. When you yawn, you'll feel that space. What's happening is that soft palate is going up. And as a result, the sound is going to travel up with it. And it's going to go out. It's going to feel like it's coming out the top of your head. It literally feels like when I'm singing opera, like the sound is resonating out of the top of my head. So that's one way to do it. The other way to lengthen the vocal tract is to slightly look up, right? So our head is slightly tilted back. We're honoring the curvature of our spine. And now I don't have this type of lengthening agent. I have this type. And so now the sound is actually coming out this way, and it's going through my hard palate. And that's going to give it a completely different sound. So now I'm not going to sound like an opera singer. Now I'm going to sound more like a pop singer or a rock singer or a contemporary musical theater belter, right? It's going to give it a completely different color.
So while we could talk about the lengthening agents of the vocal tract and how to make changes, it's a lot easier to show you. So, Brav, why don't we pull up some examples?
Perfect. So my first example here is actually Kelly Clarkson. She's going to be singing a cover of "All by Myself" by Celine Dion, and this is actually on the live Kelly Clarkson show, and she just knocks this out of the park.
Kelly Clarkson show.
What was the timestamp for that? Because I lost it.
122.
Oh, I was way off. I was way off.
I was way off.
And you'll notice right off the bat, she's slightly tilting her head up. She's singing through the hard palate, but even her mouth is a little bit wider. And even that is going to contribute to a color change. That's going to give your voice a slightly different sound. Interesting. So, Jen, last time we watched this, I didn't catch this. She's actually tilting up and slightly looking to the right, right? So she's looking up and she's kind of making that position, slightly looking over her right shoulder on this note. So anything on that? You got anything to say about kind of also looking to the right here?
Yeah, I mean, while it's not wholly necessary, it's certainly, an affectation that she's perhaps developed or she's emotionally invested, and it's certainly not affecting the sound. What's really important for singers at home who are going to be trying this is to not like manipulate and hold a position. We really want to be embracing the freeness and the buoyancy of the tone. So be
sure.
finding, as Brev said earlier, like honoring the curve in the neck, the honoring of a posture, I think is more important than finding and placing a
I
sound.
agree. I like to tell my students that is a feeling of release. So instead of actually placing it into that spot, almost imagine that you're releasing it into that spot. And that's why I like the term honor the curve, because otherwise what we'll end up doing is we can actually force our neck to do this, and now we're creating tension here. And we don't want to have a lot of tension here. We want to put the tension where it belongs, down in the posterior chain, in our posture, right? Like where our body can actually take that tension, so that this can all just free up. And you'll even see him kind of rocking my head left and right while I do this. If I can't do this while I'm singing, then it tells me I'm probably activating some muscles that I don't need. And those are the muscles that are eventually going to cause fatigue and that kind of thing. So while you are working on these lengthening agents, it's important that you have a trained ear, like a vocal coach or a voice teacher, help guiding you through these different lengthening agents. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the other lengthening agent. So Kelly Clarkson, as we were saying, she was honoring the curve, slightly looking up, in her case, slightly looking over the right shoulder, which isn't necessarily wrong, right? There's no wrong in music. There's just artistic choices. So she's slightly tilted, and the sound is coming out the hard palate. Now we're going to watch an incredible opera singer, Isabelle Leonard, do the other lengthening agent, where she's actually slightly tilting her head down. Her jaw is slightly tucked, but in a released way. And she's raising her soft palate, and she's getting the lengthening agent now through the soft palate. And one thing I want to point out is you'll even notice her mouth, like Kelly Clarkson's mouth was really wide, right? Like we even talked about how she was really opening her mouth and she was even spreading a little bit. Look at Isabelle Leonard.
Barely moving.
I mean, her mouth is like closed essentially. She is getting all of that back space, right? So I almost think of that as like a hinge, right? If I'm opening my mouth really wide, like back here actually kind of closes a little bit, where if I don't do that, sometimes I can create even more backspace, and we'll be seeing even more of that in some of these other operatic examples.
In classical singing, I've said to singers before, just imagine that you're a bad ventriloquist. And I say bad because, like, obviously the mouth is going to be moving, but it's not going to be this kind of,
Right.
I don't know,
We're not gonna look like
Pac-Man kind of style.
Pac-Man. That's a perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't want any Pac-Men while they're singing opera. The
right.
other thing that I want to point out is she's not using a microphone, and she's singing at a massive opera house, and she has not just heard in the front row, she's heard all the way in the back row, and that's because of the overtones that she is creating. We call that in opera, we call it the squillo. That's because of that squillo that she's creating. It's just allowing that voice to shine throughout the entire opera house. It's absolutely impeccable singing. I mean, absolutely incredible. Another thing I do want to point out is with these two different lengthening agents, you can play with the dials a little bit. So let's just say we're going to lift the soft palette a little bit. I almost imagine that my soft palette is its own little dial, like on a soundboard. So I'm going to turn that dial up a little bit. And sometimes in opera, I'll even turn up the hard palette dial a little bit, and I'll actually combine both of these lengthening agents to give it a different color. And so we're going to be looking at some different examples of that in this as well. And the only reason I bring that up is you'll notice on that final high note, there was a little slight tilt of her, not as much as Kelly Clarkson, but just a tad, and just that little bit can change the color. So let's take a look at another incredible singer that's doing the hard palette version now. So now they're going to be tilting up a little bit, looking up and singing through the hard palette. So this is Steven Tyler, and this was on American Idol season 10 finale, and he's going to be singing his song Dream On. Now look at that. You can see right there. He's like bent over at the hip, but still looking up to get that lengthening agent, to get that tone, to get that color. Do it again. I mean, that is a textbook example of going through the hard palette. Again, he's spreading his mouth, right? Just like Kelly Clarkson was on that crazy high note. I mean, I don't know how old Steven Tyler was here in this video, but the fact that he, in 2011, was still able to sing this way is absolutely incredible. And we're talking about one of the greatest rock singers of all time who had an incredible career singing some of the most incredibly challenging music. But clearly he was doing something right, because he was able to have just a massive career. Now, Steven Tyler did run into some vocal issues, but I mean, that's to be expected with almost every professional singer who's singing night after night after night after night like this for, 30 years or so. But still, that's a textbook example of singing through the hard palette. Now, I want to give another male singer example of a male singer singing through the soft palette. So this is American baritone. This is Sherrill Milnes. This is actually one of my idols in opera. I was lucky enough to meet Sherrill Milnes and actually get coached by him when I was younger. And he was absolutely incredible, and he really gave me some great pointers. One thing I want you to notice about Sherrill Milnes is he does actually tuck his jaw even more than Isabelle Leonard did, and he's got this great posture, very broad in the chest, keeps his jaw just a little tucked, soft palate raised, and I mean, we're talking about one of the most dramatic, just incredible voices of his time. One thing I also want to talk about with Sherrill Milnes is when he is singing this, the jaw movement is just, he's doing as little as he possibly needs to get the diction across, right? You don't see a bunch of jaw motion with him. You do see the jaw opening and closing as necessary, but it's not like he's over chewing all the, kind of like Jen was saying with the Pac-Man. His jaw looks so relaxed in this dramatic repertoire. Now, what I like to think about when I'm singing repertoire like this is I almost like to imagine that my head is a hot air balloon and the jaw is just the little basket hanging below. It's just kind of going along for the ride. And this is a textbook example of an opera singer singing some really challenging dramatic repertoire without really engaging the jaw too much. And you'll notice there is a slight tuck here, soft palate raised, but other than that, it's not that much jaw movement here. On that high note, you'll notice he slightly does tilt up, right, to get a new color, different color. And what's even crazier is he is singing that high A flat, which is like, it's a really challenging note in the baritone literature. He's singing that high A flat. He's sustaining that high A flat. And then he's even changing the vowel from the ah over to the E vowel. And that is just absolutely incredible pedagogy. Now, as I said, you can use these two different lengthening agents and kind of play with the dials to get some different colors. So in this next example, who is, I mean, Jen, this is probably what is it safe to say that Pavarotti is probably celebrated as the greatest opera singer of all time?
I mean, yeah, if not first,
he's definitely up there. He's probably the most famous opera singer of all time. In fact, I have a painting. I painted Pavarotti. I painted him. He's right back here. He was part of my series of my personal favorite, just influential singers that I have in my project. And so you will notice in his example that there is he does slightly look up from time to time. Another thing that you'll notice from Pavarotti is that he barely moves his mouth. His mouth is so small for a lot of this. So you're going to see a lot of little mouth, tiny little mouth, big soft palate raise, and just some of the best singing that this earth has ever heard. Incredible how little his mouth was moving there. I mean, it's insane. If you were to just pause it on Pavarotti singing, it almost doesn't even look like he's singing. I mean, look, he does not look like he's singing, yet this unbelievable tone is coming out of him. Like it's unbelievable. When you listen to a recording of Pavarotti singing with all these other opera singers and they're doing trios and duets and all that, you can't help but your ear just zones in on that one voice, and it was Pavarotti. It's just unbelievable.
I think listening to the guys singing too, it's such a testament to the lengthening agents of the vocal tract and the changes that you can make. Because not to geek out too much, but with women singing in classical singing, it is a head dominant sound. So it's going to sound completely different from Kelly Clarkson, say, for example, with her chest dominant sound, because it's a different muscle. But here is Pav and Sherrill Milnes and, Steven Tyler, like they're using the same musculature dominance,
right?
But
the thyroretinoid dominant. There's right. So much more thyroretinoid. Actually, it's funny too, because you bring that up. Kelly Clarkson is actually closer in the musculature to Pavarotti, probably, and Sherrill Milnes and Steven Tyler than she was to Isabelle Leonard, because she's using so much more thyroretinoid muscle, chest voice muscle to create that sound. And anyone in here who's ever tried belting those high belts, I mean, you feel it. It gets tight if you don't create that lengthening agent. If that lengthening agent's not there, you're not going to produce the sound as efficiently as you otherwise would be able to. like at the tail end of that, you see him slightly tilt up and just playing with that other lengthening agent just a tad through the hard palate. Not
But
too much, but just a little bit.
it's so tall. Like it's unfathomably, oh my God. Unfathomably tall.
He sounds incredible. I mean, it's
He does.
insane how good this guy was
Otherworldly.
at singing, especially in
Yeah.
these earlier years. So this is young Pavarotti. A lot of people on here have probably heard Pavarotti when he got a little older because there's just more recordings of that. But when you can find a recording of him when he was younger, oh my God, it's unbelievable. All right, so now let's go over to another male singer, but this is a rock singer. So we're going to be looking at Journeys. This is Steve Perry singing Don't Stop Believin'. And he, again, as you probably guessed it, is going to be going through the hard palette. And so let's listen to that now. All right, and he's doing the same thing that Kelly Clarkson was doing. Do you see that?
The right shoulder, it's got something going
The
on.
old right shoulder bit. That's what we're going to call that. So slightly tilting up, kind of looking over the right shoulder. I will say this, looking over the right shoulder, it probably doesn't really change your tone very much, but it is changing the vocal tract ever so slightly. So it would be naive to think that it doesn't even just slightly change it. So what he's doing is he's going through the hard palate. Again, he's looking over the right shoulder, which he probably doesn't need to do, but he's in the heat of the moment. I mean, look at him. He's in full-fledged rock singer mode right here. I mean, so he's not going to have a totally static neck while he does this, but I mean, it's Steve Perry, and whatever he does is right, because he's just an unbelievable singer.
Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street light,
Slightly tilting back. You see that? Slightly tilting, arching his back just a tad, and just lightly tilting up, going through the hard palate. What a cool sound.
The release was really cool too. He just like tossed his head back, like just let the sound recoil like in, baseball, like following through. It was really cool.
It's insane how easy he makes it sound.
Ugh.
Like when he's singing in that, like when he gets to these high notes, sure, there is a natural, like, majestic, almost tension in that sound that gives it that rock flavor. But
Sure.
right before that moment, when he's like not quite in the high range, but he's actually probably in his passaggio, he made it sound so easy. It sounds so free. And then he gets up to that money note, and the reason that money note was there is because he's navigated so well leading up to that point too. Just again, fantastic pedagogy.
So, as we were hunting for classical clips, I found two of Isabelle Leonard that I really wanted to share. So, Isabelle Leonard is a light lyric mezzo soprano, and we will absolutely have to dig in on another episode of voice parts and how to know what your voice part is and kind of the three indications of what your voice part may be. But anyway, I digress. This is so cool because in Que fais-tu, this aria, she is singing a high C. And this is like at the top of a late lyric mezzo-soprano's ability to sing and sustain a note. So much so in this and Una voce that often sopranos can sing the piece too.
So
And
you're saying so a mezzo soprano, it's a voice type in opera, so it's
right,
not it's a lot of the mezzo sopranos, Jen, probably sang alto when they were in choir when they were younger. Is that probably safe to say?
pretty safe to say. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the altos from high school choir, they probably aren't actually true altos because altos are actually, it's actually pretty rare voice type in comparison in opera terms anyways. So what Jen's talking about is mezzo soprano, which is, it's actually, I think it refers to half soprano. Isn't that what that literally translates to?
I think middle, hopefully middle soprano. We're certainly not half.
Yeah, hold on, let me get that right. Mezzo, I thought that's what it stood for. Mezzo soprano, female vocal range between let's see, translate. Half soprano. I was right.
Oh,
Yep. Got it. Gotcha. And so what? And so mezzo soprano. So it literally means half soprano. Now that doesn't mean like they're half of a soprano. It means they're that kind of halfway point. Think of it this way: they're the halfway point between alto and soprano, right? But they are a very popular voice type in opera. There's a lot of literature for the mezzo-soprano. And kind of, Jen, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like what you're saying is sometimes the sopranos, the lyric sopranos, will hijack the mezzo-soprano repertoire just
Right.
because they can sing those high Cs so freely.
Right, absolutely. But Isabel Leonard here, what you'll notice is, as Brev was talking about earlier, she is absolutely playing with the dials. At a point, you'll see her bare her teeth, her top teeth, to hold and sustain this high C for it's amazing.
Gardez bien la belle.
Again, you'll notice a very small mouth shape, lots of space in the back, ringing throughout the entire opera house.
Votre tourtelle vous échappera.
So many different mouth positions throughout that. Do you notice that? And
Oh,
really what she's doing there is she's coloring every single note in that little riff that she was in. That little, what they call it, melismas in opera, when you're singing several notes per syllable, right? That's called a melisma. In pop music, we usually call them riffs or runs or whatever. And when she's singing each of these notes, you'll even see slight changes of the mouth position. And what she's doing is she's coloring those notes so that they just sound so majestic throughout that entire opera house. And it's fantastic singing. So now let's compare that to EJ from the K-pop Demon Hunters. They had a chance to sing on Jimmy Fallon's live show. So this is Golden, and you're going to notice a lot, very similarly to Steven Tyler and Kelly Clarkson and Steve Perry, she's going to be going more through the hard palate, slightly tilting back. You'll even see in this first clip that she is slightly tilting back and her mouth wider, right? She's getting more of that squealo coming through the hard palate versus the soft palate.
Shiny like I'm born to be.
Now, she is below the passaggio at this point, and so you'll notice she's not tilting up, right? She hasn't done that yet. So she can still keep her more neutral position with her head, with her neck. She doesn't have to tilt up yet, but as she gets higher, you're going to start to see that honoring of the curve, and she's slightly going to be tilting back.
'Cause we are hunters, voices strong, and I know I believe.
Right there. You'll see she's looking up at this point, and actually she's looking over her left shoulder versus, so not the right shoulder anymore. But again, that's probably more for performance sake than anything.
We're going up, 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 it's our moment. You know together we're blowing. Gonna be going. Up, up, up.
Right there, when she goes up for the high note, did you see that? It's like she's tilting up just a tad for the high note. Let's watch that again.
Gonna be going. Up, up, with our voices. You wanna give this a woman. Gonna be going.
And I mean, we're talking about another absolutely fantastic singer. I'm so glad that they got a chance to do this live. After so many people kind of criticize them for not being able to do it live, but clearly they could.
yeah.
So that's kind of wraps up my vocal examples of all of these lengthening agents. I did want to say though,
Wait a second. Wait a second. You haven't
What?
even showed anybody any of your.
oh, my examples. All right. Well, did you have any specific specific ones that you wanted to cover?
I mean, I just think it's so cool. Earlier on, we were talking about how, right, the vocal folds are kind of like the mouthpiece to a brass instrument. I mean, Brev here has trained rigorously to make sure that he can sound like a trumpet and a flugelhorn and a French horn. So we
Well,
should
I do not. So
definitely,
just to be clear here, I do not do a spot on flute or trumpet. I can't mimic those instruments. So I think
well,
you're talking about an analogy here, right?
yes,
Okay.
in terms
Just to make sure
of
we're
the
clear.
lengthening agents of the vocal tract and how you manipulate your instrument in a way that honors your style and is
Sure.
free and lovely. So I think you should probably show people some different styles here of what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I'll go into that. Before I do, what Jen's saying here is so naturally I'm a low bass, right? I'm a bass singer. You know, anyone who says that I'm not a bass singer because, you know, obviously Reddit channels, you know, they talk about whether or not people are actually tenors or actually basses. If they did test my passaggio and they heard my vocal timbre in person, they would have no question that I'm a bass. But because of this, when I was younger, I always used to get frustrated because I wanted to sing higher songs, right? I was the bass that wanted to sing, Josh Groban, or I wanted to sing along with Freddie Mercury from Queen, for instance. But it was really frustrating because I was a low bass. So all that really means is that my vocal folds are a lot thicker than, say, Jen's vocal folds. In fact, we were talking about how the vocal tract shapes your sound. It'd be really funny if Jen actually traded vocal folds. Like if Jen and I traded our vocal folds, she would still sound like Jen. It would just be a lot deeper. Like her voice would be deeper, but she would still sound like Jen. I guess she would sound like Jen with a cold, right? Something like that.
Bad cold.
Yeah, bad cold. And I would still sound like Brev. I would still sound like myself, but I would just be able to sing quite a bit higher and definitely not as deep. So what I've had to do with my singing to kind of overcome the limitations was I had to figure out these lengthening agents really on my own. So when I was younger, I actually had a voice teacher, and I won't say his name because they didn't really know this in pedagogy back in the day about these lengthening agents. And he used to say that if I ever looked up, that he was going to mark my chin with a marker. He'd be like, no, you don't need to look up. The high notes aren't up there. That was a big one for him. He would say, nope, the high notes are not up there. Why are you looking up? And what he didn't realize was that literally 10 years later, there was going to be more research coming out on why it was so necessary for singers to be able to find these lengthening agents. And I actually learned about these lengthening agents from an incredible pedagogue named Carrie Obert. I heard her do a lecture at a pedagogy clinic in Boston. And it was really nice for me to hear that because I've been doing this type of singing for a long time. And so to see that that lecture, I mean, it meant a lot to me to be like, all right, so people have been telling me that I had people tell me that I was doing it wrong. And it made me feel, I guess, a little vindicated is probably a good word for that.
Sure.
I felt vindicated because it's like, you know what? I haven't been doing it wrong. I've just been making artistic choices. And so I always like to tell people there is no wrong in singing. There are just artistic choices. And so, Jen, I have some examples that I think do show this better than others. I actually have this perfect Sam Smith, Lay Me Down.
Before you dig in, I do just want to say that there's a difference between forcing a posture because it's like the right thing to do or it's an accident and sort of allowing your body to honor a posture that feels completely free, right? I mean, your desire, your urge to look up a little bit was out of freedom, right?
It was instinctual. I would say it was instinctual. I mean, sure, I was probably searching for vocal freedom in this instinctual, I don't know what you would call it, but I was probably looking for vocal freedom, but it was more out of instincts than it was like, I wasn't purposefully looking up, right? It was something that I naturally was doing. And I will say this, a lot of singers naturally do that, right? I don't think I'm that unique in this. But it was something that I was told was wrong. But later, found out that there's a whole means of teaching this. So in this example of a cover that I did of Lay Me Down, you're going to notice that I am looking up through the hard palate for portions of it, but then there's going to be portions of it where I actually slightly tuck the chin, and that's going to be when I go into my more cricothyroid dominant phonation, so like the more head voice dominant mixed voice that you're going to hear me do.
Can I lay by your side?
So all of that blatantly through the hard palate. You can even see me tilting up. Now you're going to see me slightly tilt down.
And next to you.
And what I'm doing there to tilt down is I'm actually lifting the soft palate because that's giving me the space I need to sing those higher notes in my more falsetto mixed voice.
You and make sure you're alright. I'll take care of you. I don't wanna be here if I can't be with you tonight.
All right, and on the riff, obviously, there are some different lengthening agents happening there, and I guess manipulations of the vocal track on those riffs to keep that color where I wanted it.
So, what about a live performance?
So that last one, I will say it wasn't necessarily live, but it was in real time. This one is definitely live. So this is just, I mean, we are, in this recording, Jen and I are on vacation, And so I definitely look like I'm on vacation. You'll see me with my sunglasses on, and I have a straw hat. So we were in Florida, and we stumbled upon this little karaoke little session happening by the ocean. And I couldn't help but sing some Frank Sinatra. And you're going to see that I'm definitely going through the hard palette quite a bit in this performance.
Life is a beautiful thing as long as I hold the string. I'd be a silly so-and-so if I should ever let it go. I've got the world on a string, I'm sitting on a rainbow. Got the string around my finger, what a world. And this is the life. Hey now, I am so in love.
I'm telling you what, he's fabulous. Come on.
So even on that last note, I know you can't see it, but what I'm thinking as I'm sustaining that last note is I'm actually opening up the space in the back as I sustain it. So I'm singing through the hard palette, but now I'm turning that other dial, that soft palette dial, and I'm giving it the space it needs so that so it doesn't really sound like I'm sitting on the note. I don't want it to feel like I'm sitting on that note, just hitting that note. I want it to feel like I'm sustaining that note and singing it all the way through the end of that phrase. And so that's a good example of me kind of playing with those dials.
Do you have anything classical?
I definitely, I have stuff classical.
Just prompting for
find
the
it.
folks at home.
Just prompting me. All right, so in this one, we've got Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. In fact, you'll see in the back corner way over there, I have my Beethoven bust. I love Beethoven.
I found him at an antique store, guys. I manifested Beethoven.
You did.
I was like, yeah.
And it was I always wanted a Beethoven bust. See, I have this my little Mozart bust because I love Mozart, but I also really wanted a Beethoven bust because I perform Beethoven's Ninth so much, and it's just like it's in my wheelhouse. It's one of my favorite pieces to perform, and so I feel like I needed that. When I'm singing Beethoven's Ninth, so before we kind of go into this, I want to kind of explain what this experience is like because it's really intense. So when you walk out on stage when you're doing a symphonic performance, it's a little different than when you're doing an opera performance. So essentially in opera, we got the wigs, we got the costume, right? We have a set, we have other people on stage, with characters that we're playing. Whereas in a symphony, there's no costumes, there's no wigs. It's just people in tuxedos up on stage, and the conductor is right up front. Everyone can see the conductor. But what the soloists have to do is they have to walk out first. Usually they walk out with the conductor, everyone takes a bow, the audience claps, and then we sit down and we wait our turn to sing. Well, in Beethoven's Ninth, so this is the final movement of Beethoven's Ninth, and we all have to sit there for quite a while before it's our turn to sing. And so we're just sitting there. Maybe we walked out, we were warmed up, but we've been sitting there for so long, and we don't want our voices to really go cold, right? We want to kind of keep things as warmed up as we can. So maybe we'll lightly hum along with the orchestra. What I like to do is I like to actually chew on my tongue, so that will like produce a little saliva so I don't get super dry. One thing I will say is anytime I like go to grab a drink of water and take a sip, immediately you can see all of the eyeballs just turn to you, right? It's like you can't make any movement at this point without the whole audience just thinking it's your turn to sing. And so you try to limit your movements the best you can. And so I just wanted to say that because at this point, I have been sitting for maybe a half hour or something, just waiting my turn to sing. And then it's like, okay, now go. And you can hear right off the bat that I'll probably sound like a completely different singer in this excerpt than I did from that Sam Smith excerpt or from the Frank Sinatra excerpt, right? And that is because of the lengthening agent. I have completely changed my vocal track, and so therefore I sound like an entirely different singer, right? Another thing I want to point out is you'll notice that I'm holding a binder. So in symphonic performances, typically you hold a binder. Even if you're memorized, they ask you to hold that binder typically, just because they want it to look uniform. Whereas in opera, you have to memorize the entire piece, and there are no binders on stage.
Lasst uns angehen.
And you'll even notice in there are some moments where I'm kind of slightly relaxing my chin down, right? And then there's moments where I'm slightly tilting up. All of this is just to color every single note in that phrase. Like, you don't want any note to kind of go dim and like static. The whole time it's constantly moving, because this is an incredible piece, and Beethoven is just, if anyone is worth it, it's Beethoven. I mean, this piece right here is what, Jen, I think this piece is a little over 200 years old now. I believe Beethoven wrote this in 1824, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's a little over, it's what, 201 years old now. And we still know this piece. In fact, I'm going to prove it to you, because you're going to hear the Ode to Joy coming up right here. We all know that. And so I wanted to call attention to that, because Beethoven is just unbelievable. And here we are 200 years later, and I'll bet every one of you knew that melody. I just think it's incredible. And so, Jen,
years later.
Sorry, what was that?
201 years later.
Exactly, 201 years later. I know that extra year. We still remember it.
I'm curious, what does it feel like singing with so much resonance? Like, you're not trying to be loud, but it's loud. What does that feel like in your noggin?
So it doesn't necessarily feel loud in my head. You do hear the feedback come back from the room a lot more. So it's incredibly loud, right? Like, one time I was with Bobby Bass and Peter Barber, and we were like checking how many dBs we could give off. And I'm not like, I don't know the exact dBs that I was able to do, but both of them were just like, my God, this is insane how many dBs you can get. It's because of this operatic training for sure. And I was singing like an operatic high note. We should check that at some point on this channel, because that would be fun. What it really feels like, though, is it feels like the sound is coming out of the top of my head. It feels like there's a laser point of just coming out here. Especially on those higher notes. When I'm singing lower notes, though, it sounds like it's coming out of here, like it's going straight out. And again, it's like a laser beam. In fact, when I'm singing those lower notes, it actually shakes my eyeballs. My eyeballs jiggle while it's happening, and it took me a while to get used to that. I do remember when I first experienced that sensation. But when I tilt back and I honor the curve and I go through the hard palette, it feels like what you would imagine. It feels like a laser beam coming out that way. And so those are the sensations that I actually feel, because the sound does resonate through. Like, you're almost giving it like a chamber, like a head start while it's going up. And it feels like it's just following that trajectory as it comes out of these, different resonators.
Right. And for the singers at home, this isn't to say that if you're not experiencing it exactly like how Brev is describing it, that it's wrong. Our nerve endings kind of, I don't know, they all function different from person to person. I mean, first of all, thankfully, we don't have nerve endings in the vocal folds themselves. And I don't believe we have them in our brain. But yeah,
Nope.
to have the experience that you're singing outside of your head is a pretty real experience for I'd like to say most classical singers, maybe all, I don't know. But
Yeah, I feel like most classical singers that I know experience that way too. They almost feel like it's coming out of the top of their head, and a lot of low basses have said that they also feel it kind of coming out this way as well. And I think it's because we're really opening that nasopharynx resonator, and so like we're almost lifting this what we call the zygomatic arch while we're singing those low notes to allow them to come out this way. And if we didn't do that, there's no way we would be able to compete with the orchestra, right? Because we're singing those low frequencies, and the orchestra is just so loud that it would get swallowed by that wall of sound. And so naturally, we open up this resonator, and it can just it gets that squealo, and it can come right out and cut right through the orchestra. I did want to talk a little bit about the difference between all those genres now in country, because I feel like country music's slightly different. In country music, I feel like they do play with the dials quite a bit more, because there are some country singers that really open the throat more, or some that really give it a lot of twang and a lot of that. And so I wanted to give an example of me singing a Josh Turner piece because he is a bass. I did take this 4 steps down, so it's a bit lower than what Josh Turner would do. But in order to sing this effectively, I did have to play with the dials of the lengthening agent, and you'll see that on some of these low notes, I'm going to tuck my jaw down, I'm going to give it the space it needs, it's going to have a darker tone, and then on the more twangier notes that you'll hear, I am slightly going up through the hard palate. Would you go with me? So you even see there already slightly tilting down. Would you go with me? Roll from town to town and never shut it down. Would you go with me? Would it be okay if I didn't know the way? If I gave you my hand, would you take it and make me the happiest man in the world? And right there, you'll see the other blatant lengthening. The happiest man in the world. All through the hard palate, right? Happiest versus happy. Like, completely different voice, right? Those are the two. That's a perfect example of just two different lengthening agents sounding like a completely different genre and even a different person singing. I gotta know, would you go with me? And I love you so, so would you go with me? Now, those lows, deep subharmonics, they need a lot of space, right? You also need to record those. I like to record those first thing in the morning because that's when the vocal folds are at their thickest, right? Because the supralaminal propria is just it's got a little inflammation from the night before. Everything is just a little thicker. And so as a result, you can do really, really good low notes and subharmonics. And I'm sure everyone watching this has experienced that. But it requires still lots and lots of space. Even on that E vowel, I still almost need to do like me. It's like that, like deep space right there. Jen, did you have anything that you wanted to add or anything that I didn't maybe touch on? Was there anything that we wanted to talk about that I haven't had a chance to kind of bring up?
I guess I wanted to talk about how this could apply to somebody who's, working on becoming a professional or who is a hobbyist. Is this something that they're able to apply?
Definitely something that everyone can apply. I will say this, though. If you're going to be playing with these lengthening agents, I think it's very important to find someone, a pedagogue, a vocal coach or a voice teacher who understands these different lengthening agents, singing through the hard palate, singing through the soft palate, because you don't want to do it with tension, right? And it's really easy to find yourself doing this with the muscles you don't want to use, right? And so I would just say, if you are working on this and you want some extra help, definitely reach out to us here at StudioBrev. There's a link in the description where you can sign up for a call. And again, at the end of this live, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer any of those too. There's only so much you can kind of do on a YouTube live. So if you do want to sign up, definitely look in the description to get that link. But why don't we talk about one of our students that did play around with these lengthening agents and kind of what she was able to do with this. And so we actually had a student, Jessie, come to us. We've been working with Jessie now for over a year. I think almost 2 years now. In fact, Jessie's one of our coaches now. That's how good she's been running with this. And when she came to us, this is exactly what she needed to be working on. She needed to be working on lengthening agents. She had to be working on the 4 pillars of singing. And as a result, she was able to discover some really new cool qualities in her voice. And so why don't we give an example of her singing, this is Too Darn Hot, and she's singing it with a big band. So she sings with a big band now. And this is a great example of her using the lengthening agent to sing through the hard palate on some of her high notes. exactly what we saw from Steve Perry, even, where she's slightly tilting, leaning back. She's in the heat of the moment. She's in full-fledged performer mode. She's tilting back. She's honoring the curvature of her spine and going right through that hard palate, and it's just resonating so nicely. And actually, Jessie did have a chance to tell us what this experience was like for her working with us here at StudioBrev. And so here's Jessie.
I started to get more into social media, into Instagram in particular, about 2 or 3 years ago, and came across your page, The Bass Viking. And then I just randomly came across one of your videos promoting your new coaching program. And so I met with you and your vocal coach. I really enjoyed that aspect that I had 2 of you. Yeah, I took the plunge and haven't looked back since. It's completely changed my life for the better. I now have a tool that I can use for the rest of my life. I now am a vocal coach of my own. It made a retirement for me. Like I now don't have to work a 9-to-5 job. I can utilize the skills that I've learned in this class to not only improve myself on a regular basis, but I can also make other people's lives better by using the tools that I was given to help them. And it's effective, extremely effective, and it's different than a normal vocal coach, than any vocal coach I've ever been in a classic setting. And it hones in specifically on the voice. It's more of pinpointed to exactly what's going on in here in the mechanism, how to use it, how to control it, and it's insurmountable, the tools that I've used and learned. And yeah, it literally changed my life, and I can't thank you enough. I don't want to even think about where I would be without StudioBrev, and it means the world to me to be a part of this and to continue to watch all these other students have the same mind-blowing experiences that literally changed their life too. The best part about all this is being able to take what you learned and apply it all the time. Before, when I took lessons, I would go home being like, well, what did we work on? How did I get that? I don't know. But with these tools, you literally get the applicable ways in order to change and be a better student and a better learner and a better vocalist.
So the thing is, everybody, is that there's so many considerations when studying voice and trying to get better, no matter what level you're at. If you're a hobbyist, just doing it for the love of it, if you're looking to make money with your voice, or if you currently are making money with your voice, there's laryngeal position and there's our 4 pillars. There's the lengthening agents of the vocal tract, like we talked about. There's so many different techniques, and you are absolutely welcome to explore this on your own, and we're here to help on YouTube. But if you want some extra help, we would absolutely love to talk to you on a call.
If you want to hop on a call, all you got to do is go down. There's a link in the description, and it's going to bring you to an opportunity for you to actually meet Jen or myself on a Zoom call where we can strategize with you and help you figure out like an action plan to get you going with your singing in the way that works for you. If you do end up working with us, it'd be a lot of fun because you get to work with us for an entire year, where you would actually be meeting with us, multiple times each week, and plus you would be in our studio and you'd be working amongst other students that are in our studio and really creating that sense of community. And it would be a lot of fun. And so if you haven't already watched the first free training we have, which is on the 4 pillars of singing, it goes even more into what it's like working with us. But yeah, click that link and feel free to learn more about it.
To really help you streamline your singing too, because that's what it's all about, is efficiency and helping you discover your voice in the most free way possible.
Yeah, and so we're gonna go now into the YouTube live. So we're gonna be doing the Q&A now. Again, if you aren't here live, I'm so sorry you're not gonna get a chance to do the Q&A with us.
I'm sorry.
But definitely subscribe to our emailing list, the StudioBrev email list, so that you can be informed for the next live that we are doing. But folks, that is Lengthening Agents of the Vocal Tract. That's about as much as we could squeeze into this one presentation. There's a whole lot more to experiment with this, and playing with the dials and using the soft palate, singing through the hard palate and all that. But that's a great way for you to at least be introduced to these different lengthening agents and these terminologies. And so it was so great doing this. Again, we're going to do the Q&A now, but otherwise, peace.